Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
And we have more updates on the situation in Afghanistan. The Taliban are making many promises, while the Afghan vice president is urging resistance against the militant group.
After taking control of the Afghan capital, the Taliban held their first press conference on Tuesday. They addressed two issues that the international community is most concerned about: the safety of those who worked for the Allied forces and women's rights.
That we are assuring the safety of all those who have worked with the United States and Allied forces. As for their talents and their skills, we do not want them to leave the country. Women will be afforded all their rights, whether it is in work or other activities, because women are a key part of society. And we are guaranteeing all their rights within the limits of Islam.
The United Nations pledges to continue working with the Taliban to deliver humanitarian aid, and the Taliban are giving assurances that they will allow the UN to continue its work in Afghanistan.
The United Nations humanitarian arm had worked with Taliban for over 18 years. We have never stopped working with Taliban. We've been working with the Taliban for all this period of time, and we have a good level of guarantees and understanding with them on how we work and how we deliver humanitarian assistance.
And evacuations continue for U.S. diplomats and citizens in Afghanistan. A NATO official said the runway of Kabul airport has been cleared and air operations resumed on Tuesday. That's after thousands of Afghan residents flocked to the airport on Monday, hoping to board a flight out of the country. The ensuing chaos had forced the U.S. to halt evacuations temporarily. And on Monday, President Biden authorized an additional $500 million to relocate Afghan refugees. And although the Afghan president fled the country, the first vice president is still in Afghanistan. He refers to himself as the caretaker president. He tweeted Tuesday, "It is futile to argue with President Biden on Afghanistan right now. Join the resistance." The first vice president had previously promised never to bow down to the Taliban.
A former U.S. Navy SEAL says the world needs America's strength right now more than ever. And the way America left Afghanistan did not send a good message. NTD's Jason Perry with that exclusive interview.
Former Navy SEAL Jimmy Graham served in many high-risk environments, including Iraq and Afghanistan. He said leaving Afghanistan was not the issue. He said the issue was actually how we left, when the troops were originally supposed to be withdrawn by September 11th.
If there was a scheduled withdrawal under normal conditions, there's nothing wrong with that. There should be that, and it should be put in place. But the second you say we're going to come take over a city that you occupy, we're going to take over a sovereign U.S. territory. That's where you draw a line saying, hey, the date just moved back. So now you're not coming in here at all.
He said we could have left with a show of strength, rather than leaving in weakness with our tail between our legs. The U.S. military is now coordinating with the Taliban and is expected to have a complete evacuation in 2 weeks. Do you really think that no one in the Biden administration knew that things were going to happen this way?
I don't. I think that's pretty apparent that they didn't, either they got bad intel or they didn't respond to the intel. But yeah, everything points to they didn't know this was coming, and it's unfortunate, obviously.
I asked Graham if there were any underlying issues with the Afghan military, and he said they were lacking a crucial trait that many might think has nothing to do with military service.
I think that there has to be some kind of honor, some compassion against for your fellow man, for your fellow troops, whatever your belief system is. You must start there. Like I tell people, when they're building security teams of any caliber, whether it be for church security or it's police officers and SWAT teams or it's schools, you can't start broken. You have to start with that character, that person that says, "I would die for you," and then you build from there. But you can't start with that person who's going to hide under the desk.
Graham had a message for fellow veterans and people who knew someone who lost their life in Afghanistan.
A friend of mine that works for a corporation with veterans programs and said some of the vets are taking it hard, saying things like, what a waste, 20 years wasted, all my buddies that died for nothing. That's very caustic talk. Don't repeat that. If somebody else says it, you're not in charge of them, but don't repeat that, because that strips the honor from anyone who's ever served or maybe lost their life over there. The fact that we're breathing free air right now is a testament that it did work. Yes, things change. Yes, there's new intelligence and new developments, but it doesn't take anything away from the honor that was achieved and earned by those who lost their lives and served in Afghanistan.
He also said it was irresponsible to leave behind the Afghans who worked alongside Americans for 20 years and that they will most likely be murdered. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has tested positive for the CCP virus. He's fully vaccinated and is showing no symptoms. According to a statement released by the governor's office, Abbott has been getting tested daily, and today was the first positive test result. A spokesman said Abbott is isolating in the governor's mansion in Austin and receiving monoclonal antibody treatment. Texas First Lady Cecilia Abbott has tested negative, and officials have notified everyone Abbott has been in close contact with. Abbott was fully vaccinated in December 2020. And an unnamed woman has sued folk singer-songwriter Bob Dylan. She alleges he sexually abused her after giving her drugs and alcohol in 1965 when she was 12 years old.
A spokesman for Dylan, now 80, said the allegations were false. He said the 56-year-old claim is untrue and will be vigorously defended. The woman, identified only as JC, filed a civil lawsuit late on Friday with the New York Supreme Court. She alleges that Dylan sexually abused her at his New York apartment over a 6-week period, and that the incidents left her emotionally scarred and psychologically damaged to this day. The lawsuit states that Dylan, who was in his 20s at the time, exploited his status as a musician to provide JC with alcohol and drugs and sexually abuse her multiple times. The plaintiff is seeking unspecified damages. Her lawsuit was submitted just ahead of a New York State deadline, which allows people to file legal claims alleging child sexual abuse that in the past were too old to pursue due to a statute of limitations. Dylan emerged from the Greenwich Village folk scene in the early 1960s to become one of the most acclaimed and influential artists of the rock era, with hits including Blowin' in the Wind and Like a Rolling Stone. He has sold more than 125 million records globally and won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016.
And Apple received backlash for threatening user privacy. NTD's Eileen Ang spoke with a tech guru to hear his perspective on the company's use for the planned image scan technology.
An Apple executive explained how its planned child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, detection system will work. That's after backlash that the software would threaten user privacy protections. Apple said the system would prevent privacy violations by never learning any information about iCloud-stored images that don't have a positive match to the CSAM database. But one tech guru still has doubts about the system's accuracy.
I don't know how can they distinguish between me kissing my 10-year-old grandchild when he's naked in the pool and a pervert trying to do something with a 10-year-old child, but, kudos to Apple if they can.
Apple ensures that the database is not controlled by a single entity or government. It uses several interlocking mechanisms, and a person will review its findings to prevent errors. While Haber is aware that many tech companies are making efforts to tackle child abuse and pornography, he questions Apple's ultimate goal.
It's slightly shocking because Apple was priding itself on privacy. On the other hand, they can say that they are the good guys in this case because they are doing it to prevent crime. And by the way, if they are doing it to prevent crime, then they quote-unquote have the right now to scan every picture, right? So what's the end game here? Why they are doing it? It escapes me.
According to one report, iPhones make up 55% of the U.S. smartphone market. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
And people in the country's southwest can expect even less water come October. That's after federal officials issued a historic shortage declaration for a reservoir amid the drought. Gloria Zhou reports.
U.S. officials have declared a massive water shortage in the American Southwest that will trigger drastic supply cuts there. Separately, 10 governors have appealed for federal aid, qualifying farmers and ranchers in their states to seek special assistance. It's the first time officials have declared a shortage at the Lake Mead Reservoir, which will see water supply cuts to Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico beginning in October. It's the largest reservoir in the country, serving some 25 million people from Los Angeles to Las Vegas.
We're experiencing it every day in the Colorado River Basin and in other basins in the West. I think the best strategy for planning is to think about a broad range of scenarios and a broad range of potential hydrology, and to work closely with our partners in the basin to try to think through all of those scenarios.
Diminishing reservoir supplies will mean less water and tough decisions for agriculture, cities, and Native American tribes in the parched region, which is in its 22nd year of drought. The drought has brought reservoir levels to historic lows and drastically reduced animal feed supplies across the region. It's sent hay prices soaring as many ranchers and farmers are forced to auction off livestock or to consider selling their land for development. The latest U.S. Drought Monitor report shows drought conditions across 99% of the region, affecting over 59 million Americans. And U.S. officials have warned that reservoir supplies are projected to keep falling.
Many Chinese students are rushing to the U.S. At an airport in Shanghai, a line of thousands of feet long, all of them waiting to board an international flight. NTD's Don Ma has more.
A recent online video captures Chinese students lining up en masse at a Shanghai airport, and many of them are going to the U.S. The huge demand on top of a shortage of U.S.-bound flights from China, ticket prices have soared more than 400%. According to Chinese media Yicai News, mid-August is the peak season for Chinese students heading overseas. It comes just ahead of the fall term, the start of the new school year. The report says that in July, U.S.-bound plane tickets ranged from $770 to $2,400. Just a month later, those ticket prices skyrocketed to the $3,000 to $15,000 range.
There's an economy class seat for August 25th. The ticket fare is 21,360 yuan. The business class seat is 76,862 yuan. August 25th is peak season for international students to return to school. These prices are the lowest right now. Their higher price tickets are more than 90,000 yuan.
Yicai News also reports there are fewer than 20 direct flights traveling from China and the U.S. right now.
There are not many international flights right now, not many per day. For example, today there were only 2. There's one New York-bound flight today.
A Beijing political affairs commentator tells NTD that there could be a number of reasons behind the demand.
The tide of people rushing to the United States is because the U.S. is still the preferred place to go for people around the world. Another reason is because the situation within China is tense. There are crackdowns happening on the elite. So these people are on edge and hastily rush to the U.S. They don't hesitate to buy a 100,000 yuan ticket.
Hua notes that many are going overseas in search of a better future. Don Ma, NTD News.
A Dutch museum came up with a creative way to make its offerings more accessible and enjoyable for visually impaired visitors. We'll take a look at how a special exhibit uses sounds, smells, and touch to help artworks come alive.
Visitors to the exhibition, called The Blind Spot, may say it's a little cheesy, but they mean that as a compliment. The Utrecht Central Museum launched the project this month. It's based on existing paintings, but adds extra dimensions to them, such as sound and smell, including the aroma of ripe cheese. And at this exhibit, museum goers are definitely encouraged to touch. Sighted visitors are encouraged to wear a blindfold as they experience works, including a replica of the 1613 still life with fruit, nuts, and cheese by florist Klaas van Dijk.
I think it's an amazing experience, which is, well, to my idea, quite unique in the Netherlands, which triggers the other senses.
One visually impaired visitor said he wondered at the way the table was physically slanted, but the objects on top of it didn't fall off. According to the artists, the idea for the exhibit had been sparked by an earlier exhibit in which they served food as part of an artwork.
There was this one day, somebody who couldn't see was there at the place where we served food out of this work, and we helped her to touch the painting, and she was blind. To touch and she was very, she had a lot of emotions. She was touched. So then I called Jeroen, and we had this. Well, we have something.
Yeah, it's based on the theme of inclusivity. That moment was the starting point to actually create this exposition.
A staff member at the museum says she considers it a first experiment on the way to further improvements in accessibility.